that's the extent of my Spanish. What was that? Okay. So DevOps is about bringing development and operations together. My talk is going to be about bringing teams and leaders together. And I'd like to know who I'm speaking to, so if I could have a show of hands, who is on a team? Kind of like an engineer or somebody like that? Okay. And who are leaders in the room? Okay, most of you are on this side. So I think by the end of this presentation, we kind of want to have this group come together a little bit. Also, we talk a lot about people, process, and tools. And this talk is really about people, the most complex, in my opinion, element of that. And so we're going to do a deep dive into people. First thing I want to do is do a little introduction on just the agenda, the learning objectives, and the outcomes. So the agenda for the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to talk about the background, the transformation triangle, some additive properties, as well as force field analysis, and the one mental question. 3 learning objectives. We really want to raise awareness of the psychological and cognitive milestones that occur in an agile transformation. We want to raise awareness of how the environmental factors can undermine these milestones. So most of the leaders who are on this side, that pertains to most of you, okay? So those environmental factors. And then lastly, we want that knowledge of the one mental question that really helps teams. There's really one learning outcome, and that is the ability to influence the environment to help the teams with the agile transformation. So a little bit of background here. This study began in approximately 2015, but it investigated the socio-psychological effects of a Scrum implementation. Now the output or outcome of the study is applicable to all agile transformations. So it doesn't matter whether you're using Scrum, Kanban, some other agile framework. Because really what we're talking about is an agile transformation and people. And last time I checked, I think science proved that 100% of teams have people learn. So I think it should be applicable. 273 team transformations, 70 years of experience was analyzed. And like I said, it's applicable to all agile transformations. So if we do a little bit of deep dive into software development, it really is a people-centric process. So success depends on people and the social factors that go with people. It also requires sharing of knowledge and a lot of cooperation to build software. Last, it's a collective activity with discussions, debates, arguments. Hopefully no tears, no blood, but it can happen. And next, let's talk a little bit about the social formula. Again, this applies to all agile frameworks. But what we're saying here is, at least within Scrum, and who's got some Scrum background? Anyone? Okay, so we got the roles, right? The 3 roles. We got the Scrum Master, the Product Owner, and the Dev Team. We have the ceremonies. How many ceremonies are there? 4. I saw a hand there. There's 4 ceremonies. And then that creates 3 artifacts. Okay? And when we break that down into really what happens with people, we're looking at people in the roles. And they come together in those ceremonies. Those ceremonies are forced interactions. That's all they are. You're forced to come together and to interact in some way to produce some form of collaborative output. Whether it's a working increment of software, it's a product backlog, a sprint backlog, it's something that you produce together. And the whole point of that is to create a business outcome. So that is the social formula of Scrum. It's really people and interactions and output. If we take a look at some equilibrium within Scrum, and again it applies to all agile frameworks, is you have to have some equality. So going back to those 3 roles, if you have a product owner who is command and control, who's trying to dictate what the Scrum Master must do or what the Dev Team must do, you don't have equilibrium. Likewise, if you have a development team that's trying to tell a product owner what is best, you don't have that equilibrium. So what you want to avoid in any sort of agile transformation, especially with people, is having one side or the other feel like they're in charge. You want equality across all the roles, all the interactions, and so on. So you want it like on the top, not like on the bottom. Now this next point is very important, especially for the leaders and for the organizations. What you need to have in order for a team to be successful is they need to be in an environment where they can actually practice Agile and become Agile. So what is key is that the organization's level of agility is greater than or equal to the team's level. The reason that is if it's not, that team is going to bump into some artificial constraint on how high they can go in terms of being Agile. So it's very important that the organization have a greater than or equal to level of agility to allow the team to thrive. That's how you get sustainable transformations. If the team has greater agility than the organization, they are capped on what they can do. It's much like a foreign body where you get a germ or something that is unknown into your ecosystem, your body, and your body fights against it. So if you have a team within an organization that is highly agile, that organization doesn't know what to do with it, doesn't know how to support it, doesn't know how to lead it, and eventually that team is going to die. So you need to have an organization that has greater than or equal to agility, and that's known as agility parity. All right, so that's kind of the background of what we're going to explore. If we jump into a transformation triangle, there's really three elements. And I've done a lot of talking at PMI, Project Management Institute, and so on. And I think everybody's heard the iron triangle, right? At least a few of you. Iron triangle, project management, one. Okay, I'm sorry. Likewise. But in order to be a speaker, you got to have a triangle. So I put this together, and really it covers three things. It covers the psychological feelings that a team goes through. It covers the cognitive realizations that teams also experience. And then lastly, it talks about the environmental factors on the bottom. The reason those are on the bottom, that is what gives support to the other two. And these three things work together for a team's level of cohesion, collaboration, and motivation. Now each of those three things are additive in nature. Now in general, the psychological feelings that evolve within a team are positive. These psychological feelings revolve around connectedness, empowerment, ownership, things like that. The cognitive realizations that occur within a team are things like the fact that success is based on a team and not individual success. Teams also experience a cognitive realization that there's a prototypical member of that team. So what it means to be a good member. And what happens is individuals begin to compare themselves to what that expectation is, and they begin to compare others to whether or not those other people meet those expectations. And then lastly, your environmental factors are generally negative at the beginning of an agile transformation. And if they are sufficiently negative, they will negate the positive aspects that come with the cognitive and the feelings. So let's talk a little bit about force field analysis. So when a team begins an agile transformation, there is a starting point for that team. I like to call that the BS line. So that stands for before Scrum, not the other explanation that maybe some of you know. So right there in the middle, we have that BS line, before Scrum. That is the line of the team's motivation, collaboration, and cohesion prior to undergoing an agile transformation. So as they begin to evolve, they develop those psychological feelings. Again, related to connectedness, are we together, are we cohesive? Empowerment, on whether or not they feel like they have some say in what they can do and how they can work. And then lastly, ownership on are they responsible for the outcome or not? What also tends to push that team along to the positive side of motivation are the cognitive realizations of, are we in this as a team together, that team success, and then do all the team members actually fit? It's not uncommon for about 5% of the population to not conform. They simply cannot become agile because of the transparency, because of the collaboration that's required. So about 1 in 20 people can't handle an agile transformation. It's just too much for them. So that can't happen. And then on the right side, or excuse me, my left, as well as your left, are the environmental factors. And those are really broken down into two main elements. The organizational preparedness, how well did the organization do to prepare for the agile transformation? Getting ready, such things as training, coaching, and so on. And then how does management behave? So how does this side of the room behave in that agile transformation? So those things work together to move that middle line either to would be your right, yeah, or your left, depending on what the force of those are. We jump into the sub-themes real quick. I kind of mentioned those, the organizational preparedness, the management behavior, and then the feelings of connectedness, empowerment, ownership, team success, and team member fit. So those are the sub-themes that happen when a team undergoes an agile transformation. Any questions on that? I'm actually rushing because I thought I had less time, but I think I'm doing okay. So what do we think the one mental question is that team members yearn to know? Out of all those elements, what does a team really want to know? If you're a member of the team, what do you want management to tell you? You didn't know it was quiz time, did you? Okay. I saw the hand, no? Pulling it back down? Okay. Any ideas? What do you want to know as a team? What you really want to know is if you're empowered. Okay, that middle psychological feeling between connectedness, empowerment, and ownership. It all goes together. You want to know, do I have a say to change my world or not? How I work, the tools that I use, how I approach things. That's what you want to know as a team. And what leaders really need to answer, either yes or no. We're the leaders in the room again? Okay, is it hard to let go sometimes? Yeah, it's hard to let go, right? You got to put that trust in that team. And if you don't, if you're essentially telling the team, you have to do it my way, they're not really empowered. They're not going to feel that respect and that trust. And that's going to break down all the other things that are happening within that agile team. The teams are not going to feel that empowerment. They're not going to feel the ownership because I'm being told how to do something. I don't have any buy-in to it. I didn't create it. It's not mine. So I'm just being told what to do and I'm going through the motions. All right? And then it's not really team success because the leader told me how to do it. They wouldn't let me be empowered. So now we've broken that whole concept apart. And then it really doesn't matter if I fit with the team or not because if we're not empowered, we're just doing it the way he said over here. Right? So that's really what teams want to know when they go through an agile transformation. Are they empowered or not? And in closing, this is what is key for the leaders. Teams want and need an environment where they are truly empowered. Leaders must create and support such an environment. Let me say that again. Leaders must create and support such an environment. That is key. Leaders, you are the environmental factors. What you do or don't do, or how you behave, or how you prepare an organization will have major impact on the team. And we talked earlier in these presentations that culture was more important than tools. The Agile Manifesto, individuals and interactions over process and tools, right? We can have all the tools in the world, but if that team doesn't feel empowered, if they don't have the connectedness to each other, if they don't feel like they own the solution that they're creating, it's not going to come together. It's not going to be successful. So it's the people side that, in my opinion, the most important. So that I have time for questions if anybody has any questions. Yes?
Is there any way to help these 5% to get in there?
So the question was, can you help the 5%, right? And it really depends on whether or not they want to be helped. So what I do when I'm not here in Columbia for the first time is I'm an Agile coach. And coaching is a lot like counseling. You have to give me permission to help you. If you don't want my help, there's not much I can do. But if that 5% really wants to be part of it and is willing to give it a shot, and are coachable, then absolutely you can help them along with understanding why things like transparency and collaboration are important, why it's important to share, and so on. But it ultimately depends on their coachability and whether or not they want to go through the Agile transformation. Thank you for that question. Any other questions? All right, that was quick. That was 16 minutes. I guess we're a little ahead of schedule now. So putting the pressure on the next presenter. So, anything else? Yes, sir.
Can you give any insight on how you collected the data?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So the question was, how did I collect the data? It was a process of interviewing a lot of Agile coaches, mainly CTCs now. It used to be CSC, but now it is a CEC, so Scrum Certified Enterprise Coach. Interviewing a lot of CSTs and a lot of CSPs, but qualitative interview with a series of structured questions that were all the same for all the interviewees, and asked a lot of probing questions to explore various themes. And after hours and hours of doing that, had to collate the data and try to theme it out and find the things that were consistent across all the interviews. And that's where those 3 main themes came from and the 7 sub-themes. So it took, because I'm slow, but it took about 2 years to do all that. So thank you for that question. What else? Anything? Yes, sir.
Do you have any recommendations about the social equilibrium, how to get to that? Because, well, we have project managers compared to Scrum Masters. They're used to.
Okay, were you a project manager at one time? You don't want to admit it. Okay, all right, fair enough. So it's like command and control, right? You have a certain way of thinking, certain way of doing things. Maybe not you, just your friend, right? I understand. So yes, it's part of that organizational preparedness that was the environmental factor. So you have to help train those people. You have to, provide coaching, provide training. And the way you actually help move a team along is you start with the language. So you're trying to use the language first to change what ultimately becomes behavior. And if I can change behavior, then I can change mindset. But I start with the language to uncover knowledge gaps. So if you were to use a word like Scrum Manager, and I know that there's maybe a knowledge gap there that can be filled by training. And once that training and those knowledge gaps have been closed, we really move on to the behavior, and that's where coaching comes in. So a coach wants more of the good behavior, less of the bad behavior. And if I can get persistency in behavior, then I'm going to get to the mindset. And that's really what Agile is all about, is the mindset. So at least when I coach, it's all about language, behavior, mindset. And you have to start with training and then move on to coaching. So they kind of work in parallel. Thank you for that question. What else? I gotta kill time, so. Anything? Anybody want to teach me more Spanish than tequila or cerveza? All right. I guess that's it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.